Now I want to turn to Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, before we talk to you about Iran and everything that's going over there, we want to get your opinions on the Pope. We've had a kind of a heated discussion today, particularly given the Pope's sending out of that picture of the young Japanese boy at Nagasaki taking his dead brother to be cremated and saying that that's the fruits of war. Like, the United States is solely responsible for what happened in Japan in World War II. And then to talk about this thing today on the Day of Peace for the World Peace, effort to send out something on migrants versus talking about hotspots. I mean, do you believe the Pope is pushing a globalist agenda? Do we have Dr. Gorka? Yeah. That's for you, Dr. Gorka.
Look, I'm a Catholic boy born and bred, so I got to be careful here with pontificate.
Yeah, we don't want to. Alex and I have already been excommunicated.
I reject that.
I don't want to end up.
We don't want to.
We've talked to half a dozen Catholics already. Everyone's ragged on the Pope, Dr. G.
So look, every human being, every man is a product of his context. So we shouldn't be surprised. What is this man's context? He grew up in a part of the world at a time of life for him, a formative time of life, where liberation theology was the driving force. And we all know where liberation theology came from. So let's not be surprised what his default settings are. I don't think it's a conscious effort. I don't think he's a paid-up member of any kind of globalizing elite conspiracy. But he is a product of his time and of his birthplace. So let's not be surprised. But at the end of the day, even the Pope can't stop what is the nationalist agenda, whether it's Brexit, whether it's a Trump train, whether it's what we're seeing in Central Europe with the nations of Poland and Hungary. We see a very, very healthy revitalization of the nation state and of Judeo-Christian values, and no one man, not even the Pope, can get in the way of that momentum.
Let's go to Iran. Tell us, is this historic what's happening, or is this just a little? Could this be equivalent to what happened in 2009? Could it really metastasize into something, Dr. Gorka?
Well, I think it definitely is significant for one very special reason. We are seeing people resist the theocratic regime of the mullahs in numerous locations across Iran after, this is the important part, after the Obama administration gave the regime of the mullahs in numerous locations across Iran after, this is the important part, after the Obama administration gave them almost $200 billion. So this is a regime that was fortified, that was reinforced by the likes of Ben Rhodes, by the likes of Samantha Powers, Valerie Jarrett, and despite them being strengthened by the last White House, the Iranian people, and it's not really the Iranian people, I think it's the Persian people, are demonstrating yet again. So it tells you that all dictatorships are at their essence weak because they deny the innate dignity of the human being made in the image of God. And as such, it's remarkable that just a couple of years after the JCPOA Iran deal that fortified the dictatorship, resist the theocratic regime of the mullahs in numerous locations across Iran after, this is the important part, after the Obama administration gave them almost $200 billion. So this is a regime that was fortified, that was reinforced by the likes of Ben Rhodes, by the likes of Samantha Powers, Valerie Jarrett, and despite them being strengthened by the last White House, the Iranian people, and it's not really the Iranian people, I think it's the Persian people, are demonstrating yet again. So it tells you that all dictatorships are at their essence weak because they deny the innate dignity of the human being made in IRGC. It has one resource, which is oil. If you look at the massive, and this is the untold story, the massive drug abuse that the youth is suffering in Iran, all of these things come together in a witch's cauldron that, again, reinforces the fact that this regime is very, very young. In historic terms, We're talking about 1979. It's a blink of an eye. It is superimposed upon a Persian national identity that never was Islamic. Remember, this is an ancient Zoroastrian civilization that predates any form of Islam. So, yes, I think it tells you yet again that the domestic factors, the historic factors, the cultural factors reinforce the fragility of the regime, and who knows where it will go, but it definitely will undermine, to your key question, it will undermine the capacity of Tehran to keep destabilizing the whole region, all the way from North Africa to the Middle East and even down to the tri-border area of South America.
I know you've got a hard out here in a couple of minutes. The last question, the president's role in this in the last 48 hours, a little different than Barack Obama's 9 years ago. Can you compare and contrast them, sir?
Yeah, very, very simply. We have a man in the White House now who loves this nation and who loves intrinsically. Maybe he hasn't studied, the Federalist Papers or the different schools of Jacksonian versus other forms of American foreign policy, but he understands the principles upon which this nation was founded. He understands what 1776 represents today. So the difference couldn't be greater. It's very easy. You only have to understand one thing. The last president didn't love America or the founding principles upon it which it was established. This president does, and it makes all the difference. He's not an interventionist. He's not interested in foreign wars, but he understands what this nation stands for, and he will stand for it unabashedly, as he did in that incredible speech in Warsaw, where he said, "We are proud of our Judeo-Christian heritage, and anybody who shares those values." That's the difference that one election can make to our great nation.
Dr. Sebastian Gorka, the author of Defeating Jihad, a book that is a must-read. You can get it on Amazon or in Barnes & Noble. It's fantastic. Dr. Gorka, thank you very much for joining us on January 1st. Happy New Year, Dr. Gorka.
President Trump weighing in on Twitter again this morning about protests erupting across Iran, saying in part that, quote, the USA is watching very closely for human rights violations. Here for a fair and balanced debate on this is radio talk show hosts Josh Kimbrell and Garland Nixon. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. We're talking about Iran at the end of 2017. Not really a surprise. It's been a common thread throughout the course of the last year. But these protests are newly erupted and seem to be growing by the hour. I want to get both of you your take on. So the president has tweeted 3 times now about this, I believe, which absolutely elevates the profile of these protests, not just here in America, but in Iran as well. What are U.S. strategic objectives? Garland, I'm going to give you a chance to answer that first. What do we hope to get out of taking a side?
Well, I think the main thing that we can hope to get out of there is a stable government. If things, there are a lot of people cheering for regime change, but they wouldn't be happy if we had regime change and Hezbollah became the new government. So you want a stable government. I do think that the U.S. needs to stay as far away as they can from this, because when you have a government in the Middle East that is in trouble, the one thing they want is to be able to blame it on the United States and not have to discuss the issue of what their true problems.
The United States government always the scapegoat of choice for countries in the Middle East. We have to point out, Josh.
They're going to be the scapegoat of choice at any rate, though. I mean, when you look at this, in my view, this is an opportunity to reset the P5+1, the Iranian nuclear agreement from the Obama era, because it clearly demonstrates the fact they've killed multiple protesters now. We're dealing with a rogue regime. We're dealing with a regime that could care less about human rights. We're dealing with a regime that even with the $1.7 billion cash payment the Obama administration made to them in pursuit of this nuclear deal and the release of hostages, has funded terrorism with it. These protests we are witnessing are because of economic pressure on the people of Iran. Well, the sanctions relief ostensibly was supposed to help the people of Iran overcome some of that pressure, and of course the government's not done that. This is a chance for us to push back and say the Iran nuclear deal was a mistake. We need to reintroduce sanctions. I think we need to push for a better deal or scrap it all together. And frankly, the president did the right thing by siding with the protesters. We should do that. I think the United States aggressively should support change in the Iranian government.
Okay, so Garland, Josh picks out an important thread. There was a lot in that answer, but one thing I want to pick out in particular is the idea that the fact that these protests are going on today is evidence in and of itself that the Iran nuclear deal failed to achieve its objectives of one of its core objectives, which was to have, when sanctions were lifted, the billions of dollars that were opened up and Iran was now able to sell oil on the international market, some of that revenue was supposed to be steered toward the Iranian people. So the fact that it's not making its way to them, that the regime still has such a close hold on these profits, is evidence of failures in the nuclear deal itself. What do you say to that?
Well, I think we've got to be wary of taking that position, because let's not forget that within the Iranian government, there was some pushback against the deal by hardliners in the government. Where there wasn't pushback was amongst the people. The people of Iran were dancing in the streets over the deal because they wanted sanction relief. So right now, if the government takes a position that it's a bad deal, they're actually opposing what these particular protesters have argued for the reason you said. They saw it as a way to get economic relief. But
it was never designed.
That never happened.
It was never designed.
That didn't happen. I mean, the point is...
But was it, I guess the question then, Josh, is was it designed to do that, or was that just a convenient side effect that the Iranian people were sort of led to believe would come on the heels of this?
Well, the Rouhani regime basically had to sell it that way because the hardline clerics were, ostensibly opposed to any discussion with the United States. Of course, we found out the UK Telegraph was reporting that even back in 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini was in conversations with the Carter administration. So the idea the Ayatollahs have never talked to the United States when it's convenient is sort of laughable. But the Rouhani regime sold this to the Iranian people and to the hardliners, is saying we're going to get economic relief for the people of Iran. Now, they also, in lots of communications we heard about behind the scenes, said, well, we're really never going to abandon our nuclear program. And I think there's two problems here. One is they had no intentions of ever helping their people overcome the abject poverty they're stuck in because of a tyrannical regime. Number two, they never have any intentions of abandoning in whole their nuclear ambitions. And those are not peaceful nuclear ambitions. I mean, they have openly said they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth and make America's streets run with blood. Back where I'm from in South Carolina, when your neighbor threatens to kill you, you don't give him time to get a gun. You try to find a way to stop the weapons program. And I think this is the time to push the reset button and say that we need to revisit this Iran nuclear deal.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we've got to leave it there, but we'll keep our eye on these protests over the coming week, and hopefully we'll have you back to weigh in with maybe there'll be some positive developments. We'll be reporting on that.
Happy New